For over 3 years, this war has been the defining conflict of our era. It has reshaped the map of Europe, fractured the global energy system, and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. And for most of that time, there was no end in sight. Just grinding, brutal, attritional warfare, meter by meter, village by village, body by body. But something has shifted. And I don't say that lightly. I've been watching this conflict closely since the first Russian column crossed the border in February 2022. I've watched the failed offensives. I've watched the peace talks that went nowhere. I've watched Western resolve harden and then slowly, quietly begin to crack. And I want to be very careful not to overinterpret signals that may come to nothing. But right now, in this specific moment, there are things happening that I think every serious observer of this conflict needs to pay attention to, not because they guarantee peace, but because, taken together, they represent the most coherent picture of an endgame that we've seen since this war began. So let's walk through them carefully, honestly, and let's think about what they actually mean. Let's start with a meeting that most people didn't notice. On March 11th of this year, a Russian delegation arrived quietly in Florida. Leading it was a man named Kirill Dmitriev. Now, if you don't know that name, you should, because in the architecture of Russian power, Dmitriev occupies a very particular and very important role. He is the head of Russia's sovereign wealth fund, the Russian Direct Investment Fund. He is Putin's personal envoy for international economic diplomacy. He is not a general. He is not a foreign minister. He is the man Russia sends when it wants to do business with the outside world, and when it wants to do it quietly. Waiting for him on the American side, Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy who has been shuttling between Kiev and Moscow for over a year. Alongside him, Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Josh Grunbaum, a senior White House advisor. Now, I want you to think about who those people are for a moment. These are not mid-level bureaucrats. These are not career State Department officials. These are members of the president's personal inner circle. When they sit down with someone, it is because the president wants them in that room. The official statement afterward was brief and deliberately vague. The two sides discussed a variety of topics and agreed to stay in touch. 7 words. And in normal circumstances, that tells you almost nothing. But here is what makes this different. This was not the first meeting, not even close. In October of last year, there was a Florida meeting so secret that senior State Department officials were reportedly cut out of the loop. What reportedly came out of that meeting was a 28-point peace framework, a comprehensive plan for ending the war drafted jointly by Witkoff and Dmitriev. When it leaked, it caused fury across European capitals and in Kiev because the terms were seen as heavily favorable to Russia. In December, Dmitriev returned to Florida. The discussions deepened. In January, another visit, this time ahead of scheduled trilateral talks between the US, Ukraine, and Russia in Abu Dhabi. And now March, 4 substantive meetings in 6 months, between the same people in the same location. And here is the detail that I think is most telling. Dmitriev was personally sanctioned by the United States after the invasion in 2022. He was blacklisted. The fact that the US government has been suspending those personal sanctions to allow him to fly in and sit at the table, that is not an administrative technicality. That is a policy choice. Someone at the highest level of the US government is authorizing those waivers, and that tells you something profound about where American intentions have moved. What are they actually discussing? According to multiple reports, the conversations have increasingly centered on economic cooperation, investment projects, energy arrangements, and a framework for normalizing relations between Washington and Moscow. And on February 19th, Dmitriev himself announced publicly that Russia had put forward investment opportunities worth more than $14 trillion in exchange for sanctions relief. $14 trillion. Let that number sit for a second. That is not the posture of a country that wants to keep fighting indefinitely. That is the posture of a country that wants a deal and is prepared to put serious money on the table to get one. Now let's talk about what happened at a rally in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. This one matters because of where it was said and how it was said. J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, was at a campaign-style rally, informal setting, American flags, crowd energy. And he said something that, if you're paying attention, should stop you cold. He said, "There has been a lot of debate about what our foreign policy should be towards Russia and Ukraine. The President of the United States has been very clear. He wants the killing to stop. He wants to get back to commerce." That's it. That was the framing. 2 goals. Stop the killing, resume trade. Now compare that to the language of the previous American administration, which spoke in